And welcome back. It's time for Opinion Court. You can get in touch with us 22422. That's our SMS line at Citizen TV Kenya or at Citizen TV News. If you're online and want to reach out to us on Facebook, we go by those same names. Please use the hashtag Opinion Court, allowing us to track your conversation. I'm at Ann Kiguta. That's Ann with an E. As I mentioned earlier, we are discussing the proposed changes to the Constitution with my guests in studio, Gatundu South Member of Parliament Moses Kuria. Across from me, Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. of the Wiper Democratic Movement, that's the constituent party of CORD. And in the middle is Edward Kisiangani, our resident political analyst. We'll be looking for the purposes of this program at two bids. That is the Okoa Kenya bid by CORD and Punguza Mzigo by Moses. And of course, there's the Boresha Katiba initiative that is of Jubilee. But again, for this program, we'll focus on the aforementioned two. I'll start with you, Prof. Does Kenya need a change to the Constitution at this time? And we've heard in previous reports, IEBC saying, it's possible to do this, even, include a referendum question at the next general election. Is this politicking, or is there a fundamental need for a constitutional change?
There is a fundamental need to change this Constitution, but it is not the change that Moses Kuria is talking about. It is also not the kind of change that Okoa Kenya is talking about, because both of them are a jaundiced representation of what the Kenyan people want. It is manipulative, it is actually sectional, it serves individual purposes. There is need for us to change the Constitution. My kind of change is a change where we revisit the Bill of Rights and say it is criminal now, not just criminal, but you must receive a death sentence for stealing our money. Corruption has killed our country, so now we change and make an exception in the Bill of Rights with regards to crimes against humanity, with regards to corruption, and also with regard with stealing elections, so that people are punished when they make mistakes in this our country, and we have a more peaceful country. So that is the kind of referendum we are looking for. But when you look at the referendum by Okoa Kenya, let's begin with Okoa Kenya. And Okoa Kenya has a basic problem. There are people who did not make it in the direct election, and they would like to still take power, using other means. For example, there is this argument that we want now a parliamentary system, and there have been arguments from Okoa Kenya which say that we now want members of parliament to become ministers. The reason why we have this constitution is we did not want the executive and the legislature to sleep in the same bed. They are now inviting us again to spread a bed where both the executive and the legislature will sleep in. This one is not going to happen.
And what's on the one on IBC? Because you've just said that we need to safeguard the election process. Is that not what Okoa Kenya is trying to do? The
one on IBC is this. Even the questions being asked about IBC are not correct questions. What we really need to do, once we criminalize the issue of stealing elections, and then we move ahead and say, what sort of electoral system do we want to give the IEBC? I have always suggested that we need an electoral college so that this question of tyrant of numbers does not come. People have minimum number of seats which they should make from a constituency, however populated it is, and that will help them to become president. This one will eliminate the unfairness we have. The second part, which we are not even talking about, is the question of what? After the elections, which kind of Senate do we want to have? Do we want to have a weak Senate like the one we have, or we want a stronger Senate so that they can check each other in terms of legislation?
Right.
But actually, what I wanted to do is to come now to the Punguza Mzigo thing, which is fronted by my old friend. I'm very happy to meet you again, because it has been very difficult to get you. Now I have found you. But now, in Punguza Mzigo, the assumption in Punguza Mzigo is that the county governments are excessive. There is a lot of wastage in the national government, which Moses Kuria serves, and he's not talking about wastage. He seems to focus on the county government. This is an enemy of devolution. In fact, the idea is, look at the national budget, and 283 billion.
You think Punguza Mzigo is an enemy of devolution?
Yes, it's an enemy of devolution. The idea is to reduce, to constrict the political space within which the devolution is operating, and make sure that power is still centralized, resources are more centralized than they are today, and then you can have several Eurobonds and leasings taking place and nobody's going to ask about it. So what I want to just conclude with that remark is that Punguza Mzigo has not taken into account the fact that out of the almost 2 trillion shillings for the national budget, 283, only 283 goes to the counties. The rest of the money in trillions remains with the national government.
So it's really about fighting wastage. You should start with
yes, that is where we begin. Okay. Not to ask the question of how do you deal with wastage when, I mean, you try to punguza mzigo when you know it's the national government which is taking much of our money without providing services.
All right, let's let Moses then articulate his reasoning for us.
First of all, it's good to see Prof again. I'm surprised nothing much has changed with him over many years.
That's an inside joke.
It's good to meet the Prof again. First of all, Punguza Mzigo is not about devolution or no devolution. It's not about where the slave masters of Wanjiko reside. Whether they reside in the city of Nairobi or in the villages, for me it does not make a distinction. But the point is that we're just too many. We are too many governors. We're just too many MPs. We are too many senators. We are too many women reps. We are too many MCAs. And I would want you to point to me one of those people who is a volunteer. One of those people who is not paid by the taxpayer. One of those people who does not get either a car or a car grant.
Including the Gatundu South
legislator. Including the Gatundu South legislator. Who gets either a car or a car grant, who gets close to 500,000 shillings away from salary for running a constituency office. And tell me, 2 years ago, what happened to Wanjiko? Because I'm very curious. Wanjiko 2 years ago could not afford so many things. Take, for example, the salary of a councillor. Just last year, but 2013, in January, Mandera County, 30,000 shillings. That was the lowest paid. In Nairobi, 80,000. Today, allowances plus salaries plus other costs, 500,000 in direct pay, another 500,000 in all the other perks. Where did Wanjiko hit this jackpot to be able to afford all this?
We can't afford it. But what Prof's point is that if it's really about fighting wastage, then there's much more in national government, but you do not need to go and get rid of women reps.
It is everywhere. It is everywhere. And women reps are not part of counties. And members of parliament who Punguza Mzigo is
the governors from 47.
We are reducing across the board because it does not matter, as I've said, whether these slave masters reside in Nairobi or reside in Wote, where Mutula Kilonzo come from. We are all slave masters of Wanjiko. Let us agree that once you reduce the number of leaders, first of all, it comes with so many other indirect costs which are reduced. Number two, it sends a message out there. Before you ask, for example, that we look at the wage bill of other civil servants, can't we start with the wage bill of us politicians so that we lead by example and we set such a moral standard? It does, Prof, and I think you're a professor. You know, what is, if you want to, for example, the things that you have advocated for changing on corruption, you are saying we need to criminalize stealing of money through corruption and stealing of votes. Is it legal to steal? In our current legal code, in our current penal code, it is illegal to steal. Right. It is illegal. You don't even need to change the constitution to criminalize stealing. Stealing is illegal, whether it is through corruption or through stealing of votes or whatever it is.
Fair enough.
But to change the chapters of our constitution that touch on representation, as the good lawyer will tell us, we need to go to a referendum.
But you do want the good lawyer out of a job. Mutula, what do you think of this proposal to scrap? He has a big heart. He doesn't need the job. What do you think of the proposal to scrap the Senate?
No, let me start with Professor. The comment he made, and it can't just pass.
Which one?
That people who did not acquire power, who use, for example, in the mention of Okoa,
who lost in the previous election,
would use Okoa Kenya, so that it's being clever by half, and he's a professor. You know, it's the way, you know, the way you would want to plagiarize a document written by a professor, and he knows that. The fact is, if the allocation to counties increased to 45, that would not benefit either CORD or Jubilee, it would benefit Kenyans. But to go to Moses Kuria, by the way, you know, this is, I like him. But you know, he has arguments that are so appealing but have no foundation. Like this argument is very appealing. It's what we call in logic fallacy ad misericorium. It is appealing. The fact is that if you scrap the Senate, you must do away with Chapter 11, which is devolution. And then you must change the system from presidential to central. Let me tell you the reason why Moses Kuria might say this so innocently. But this argument is not new. This argument was there a long time ago when we scrapped the original Senate. And then we came up with paper number 10, and we said, you know, there are some places in this country which we can develop. And somehow, once they pick up, they will take care of the places that are outlying, like the northern frontier. That argument is 1966. I'm surprised.
What would you say the Senate has to, though, show for itself as a body under this new constitution that is functioning and necessary?
It's necessary because maybe you have not followed, and this maybe I will need a whole day to, you know, sort of give you the
don't worry, I'm good on the uptake. Go ahead.
Yes. The Senate has, in the last 1 year or 2 years, that is 2.5 years it's been in existence, been a stopgap between what has been the tyranny of numbers, the clawing back of devolution, the clawing back of the effects of devolution and the constitution by the National Assembly. I will just give you one example. National Assembly, in its wisdom, and for the first time, voted 246 members so that the Equalization Fund and Article 204 should go through constituencies. Trust me, if we leave devolution, and you see, the purpose of equalization was to make sure that counties that have been marginalized for eternity since 1963, because of sessional paper number 10 and because of the wisdom of the first government since independence, that we do not need a Senate. That is the reason that some areas in this country still don't think they're in Kenya. And therefore, the Senate has stood in the gap between what is excessive power. And you know, the theory that is used in the National Assembly, in my own perspective, and I can be corrected, the National Assembly is in bed 100% with the executive. And that is the reason we are having the problems we are having in this country. And because they believe that power is sweet, and it is sweeter when it is concentrated, it is the Senate of this republic that is going to make sure that every time you put more sugar in the power, we dilute it, so that then we can have what is called a devolved system, because that is what Kenyans wanted.
But now, if the National Assembly, as it is now, is already in bed with the executive,
yes.
So you want to improve the bed?
No,
because you are
just want to get off the bed.
No, you are bringing you are improving the quality of the bed, because now you want to have ministers in parliament as MPs.
I was giving you the theory.
In Okoa, Kenya.
Yes,
right.
Yes. But what I agree with you.
Let him finish making his point. Let Professor finish making his point.
What I agree with you, what I agree with you, there is a crisis of Senate.
Yes.
And actually, those who weakened Senate now, we are paying the price for that. Maybe you can say you want us to strengthen Senate.
Yes.
But anybody who suggests we remove Senate, is actually an enemy of devolution. And yes, so I agree with you. But when you also want a referendum where now you say you want ministers, you are condemning legislators sleeping in the same bed as the executive, then you now want ministers who are in the house, sitting in the house as
already
MPs,
in bed with the executive,
to become what? To become ministers, while they are also MPs. You know, you are not solving the problem. We can't make any political gain out of that dispensation. Now, for him, you are a lawyer. You understand what I'm talking about when I talk about the executive and the legislature.
Yes.
Look at schedule, I think 5th schedule, Article 17. 6th transition clauses.
It's 5th schedule.
Yes, which talks about the provincial administration.
Yes, 17.
Article 17 of the 5th schedule. It says that the system we call the provincial administration
within 5 years.
Within 5 years should be reformed actually to fit, to accord with and respect the county government.
Yes.
What has happened? Literally every post that is in the counties has been duplicated by what? The national government.
True.
Now, do you need a referendum on that?
There are other legislative ways.
Yes, you can still take a legislative agenda and say, why do we have a ward administrator as well as the chief? One must work and another one goes home. Now, that is where the West is coming from. So whatever changes you make in the constitution, and you say these constitutional changes should take place, as long as the national government still holds the counties with suspicion, we are not going to make any progress out of this.
All right, let's move on to now the Okoa Kenya bid. Oh, you may want to respond also on this, sir.
Respond. There's something that we forgot to mention.
Please go ahead.
That the Senate has also an initiative where I sit as the vice chair and Mokomen as the chairman, and we have presented a report, and the report is the same, that we must strengthen devolution. That is where the crux of the matter is. So it was important that I mentioned that what Kuria is doing is what is called Lone Ranger, because I don't know who is representing. He must be representing himself as Gatondo, because it's not a Jubilee sort of...
representing the people of Makueni. Yeah, you will be shocked. You will be surprised how people of Makueni support me. Now,
of course, that's why I said I will be shocked.
You know, yeah, because you'll be really shocked, because I've got a lot of people even in Makueni who I'm talking to are tired of how many we are, tired of you as a senator, tired of me as an MP, tired of having so many governors, tired of having so many people who are not adding souvenirs of Ugaris in the house of the
How do you propose to reduce counting? This is my concern, please.
Excuse me. Yes. Let's talk first of all about the principle. Number one, I am pro-devolution.
Let him go ahead.
And I want to have more money in the counties. But I want to also have viable counties. You know, large enough counties. For example, between Alfred Mutua and Kibuda Kibwana, surely we can have one county. Between
is that based on an economic block?
Based on economic blocks. And look at these are not happening.
That's where
recently, we had Jumuiya's counties of Pwani, which was launched by none other than one-time Prime Minister in Kwale the other day. 6 counties coming together and saying it is more viable, it makes more economic sense for us to run our infrastructure, our investments, our economic policies. One. From there, we went to Eldoret, then NOREP, Northern Rift Economic Bloc. Right. Then they had one forum there, the Rick Basin, Economic Bloc, another one. The other day there was a talk about coffee-producing counties of central Kenya coming up as one. So before even politics could tie up its shoelaces, common sense is ahead of it. Because what's happening with these economic blocks and economic zone is that people are realizing that instead of having a small road here, bigger, that makes more economic sense. And it's not me who created those zones. But if you do that, they're actually coming up naturally. And let us not get lost in what I would call cliché. Because now it is good to say, oh, let us strengthen devolution. But excuse me, what does Wanjiku want? Wanjiku wants more food. Wanjiku wants more bursary. Wanjiku wants, better health care. So it is good to have all those laws. High holding words.
If that is the case,
we cannot get lost in it. Number 2, show me the value add. How, if we didn't have county Senate today, what would have happened to devolution? Show me one thing that Senate has done that strengthens devolution, not weakens it. And finally, let me ask this question. Why are you assuming that between national government and county government, that relationship is antagonistic, that it requires an umpire or a large person just to be there?
So that nobody has absolute
antagonistic
power. Nobody needs absolute powers, and that's the role of the Senate to check.
But you see that what they're saying, national government and counties are always going to fight, not complement each other. So we need to be there, even if we're getting salaries for nothing, and wait for that one day when they'll fight.
Suppose we do that, Moses, I would like to share this with you. Part of the reason why Senate was weakened is because some people feared they still want to hold on power. In the National Assembly. Now, suppose we change the tact and then we say we want a fully federal republic. That becomes the referendum question. What will you say about that?
Anything
a federal republic with this big unit.
Anything that is for the good of Wanjiku. Anything that makes Wanjiku not pay for my salary and Mutula
I want your opinion.
When they can pay for one.
Because we shall empower the big economic blocks now. Does he want federalism?
I'm just wondering, but let me say...
I'll be for it. You know why? If it makes economic sense, and it minimizes the burden for
why do you think yourself?
What is interesting is that I haven't had an argument that counters what Moses is saying about economic blocks making sense. So could you touch on that?
About Jumuiya.
Why? But that is the trend.
That is economic. They are political arrangements.
Oh, really?
Yes, they are political arrangements. The fact of Moses,
because they bring investors together. They say invest in this region.
Yes, it's just
not in one county.
Build the roads together. The purpose of devolution is a little more of dealing with Mwananchi directly and delivering services to them. Let me explain. And that's why Moses, the financial analyst, and not a lawyer, because the financial analysts don't like history. The fact of the matter is that the person in Kibwezi in my county used to go all the way to Embu to look for an ID, which that was the provincial headquarters. And the reason why you have decentralized some of these things is to make sure that the person in Kibwezi doesn't have to travel that far. Because there's a cost element to it. Now, if you tell, Lamu is a small county, very small county. But if you told Lamu County today that they should secede and go to Mombasa or Kilifi, they would kill you. If you go to Mandela,
well, let's hope not.
But what I'm simply saying is this: that what Moses Kuria is suggesting has been done before.
And it didn't work.
And it didn't work. So we have now tried something new. Now, the purpose of something like equalization fund, his argument, by the way, is viable, but not now. The purpose of equalization fund, and that's why it has a sunset clause, was that some counties which were marginalized since 1963 are supposed to be accelerated in terms of basic services. Once they reach that level, in 20 years, you then scrap the equalization fund. Now, what you would do in future is say that we want to see devolution working for a certain period of time. Provide a sunset clause so that when you find that there is infrastructure in Makueni the way there is infrastructure in Kiambu, you find that there is water, running water in Makueni the way there is running water in Kiambu and Nairobi, then you say...
But you have no problem with that. Why do they have to be 47?
Moses, just hold, okay, fair enough. He's made his point. Sorry, no, I don't want you to explain that, sir, because we haven't even touched really on Okoa, Kenya, which is regrettable. But let's touch on one issue to deal with Okoa, Kenya, and that is devolving more money. And the argument has been, why do we want to give even more money to counties when we've already seen such wanton wastage of what has already been appropriated? Take us through that logic.
Let me explain. The fact that we elected bad governors doesn't mean that we must do away with devolution. It is possible that in the next dispensations, Kenyans are going to be wiser and we are going to elect better managers of our funds. The logic is as follows. We have devolved the function of health, 93%. But the national government, through the National Assembly, is keeping 54 billion. Now, we, the Kenyans, voted Article 187 and said that if you devolve a function, you must devolve the resource. The Ministry of Agriculture, the functions of agriculture are all devolved. But where are the funds? They are residing in Nairobi. Same with health, same with many, many things. So the point is not about the fact that you need to take money. The fact is, in reality, the functions of Schedule 4 have been devolved to counties entirely. But they have not been followed with funds. That is why one of the articles, one of the things that you are running today about maternal health, why do you think it's being affected?
It's in jeopardy because
it's in jeopardy because it's a devolved function. But who is keeping the funds? The national government. So therefore, if you do the calculations, the mathematics about the functions that are devolved and the funds that are national government, you will get a formula. And that formula is that the money that is at national government is being kept there when it's supposed to go to counties. In fact, in this financial year, one minute. In this financial year, we had to actually revote funds that were kept in national government back to counties. That is what we are talking about. That's the logic. It's not the West. Because we are going to jail some of these people. That doesn't bother me.
I thought, Senator, instead of going that way and saying, you know, we need more money in the counties, the kind of question, the referendum question, because I said I support referendum, but not the kind of questions you're asking. The main question you should be asking is that what is the role?
The question has not been drafted.
No, of course, I'm now enriching it. What would be the role of governors in raising resources? Because those who drafted our constitution, and you are a distinguished lawyer, you might have foreseen that, said that at least 15% of the national budget should remain in the counties. Whoever drafted that envisaged that there would be creation of resources by the governors themselves and also the counties themselves to cover up for the deficit. Nothing. Everywhere in the country you don't see the governors. They are a parasitic team. They look for money from the central government. They even misuse it. Is it because
which is entitled to the constitution?
Is it because of legislation, or how are the counties supposed to raise the remaining 85% after receiving the 15%? Isn't that a question that we can take to the
question is there, and the concern is there.
Yes.
And the concern is that counties are actually collecting less funds than they were envisioned to. The former municipal councils were collecting.
Correct.
That is called corruption. The fact of the matter, if you go to the county of Nairobi, they're collecting a lot of money. Nairobi, by the way, collected 10 billion shillings. The fact is that Professor is right, that if you look at the revenue that can be collected from counties, it simply means that we have not done enough. But there's a role where national government and county governments are supposed to put what is called capacity building, so that the resources and the facilities that are available to counties like Nairobi, where it is easy to collect revenue, are also available in Mombasa.
I've stopped begrudging Okoa, Kenya on the issue of adding more money to counties. I have no grudge against them. I would support it. But we do that to fewer counties. If we have to have thieves in this country, let's have less thieves. Okay? No. If money has to be stolen down there,
you are out of order.
Yeah? You're out of order.
You're out of order.
The few that we can track.
If we can have, if we must have thieves in this country, let's have the few of them. Let's not have, in the name of strengthening devolution, 470 ministers in the county government.
Yes.
Talk about the national government.
1,500.
National government?
I'm coming there. 1,500 chief officers in the counties. I'm saying don't do 47, do 55, but do to units. Let's do it. Give that 55% to less thieves instead of 45% to 47 thieves. I think that's my point. And you know what? 1 million shillings in my pocket or in the pocket of Mutula Kilonzo might not add much, but if you convert that to how many bursaries, for example, that can give to the common man down there, it's a lot of, it's a very big impact, and it has come to a point in this country when we start caring, and what we say, you know, those poor people down there deserve this money. One day they will have nothing to eat.
Where is the guarantee that this money will end up there?
Where is the let's see what you have to say about our conversation, and thank you for sending in your views.
That we see.
Constitutional amendments require resources. I'm wondering where we can get the money when corruption is trending. How are we going to fund this referendum? The timing is wrong, but we need it. To say the least, there is over-representation, role conflict, inefficiencies and wastage. The truth is that this constitution is too expensive for Kenyans. On this one, I support Honorable Kuria. Punda amechoka. This constitution has only been in place for 3 years. You have suffered because of poor leadership. So don't blame the constitution, blame the leaders. The final one here, I agree with Kuria on the reduction of the number of MPs, but women's reps should remain untouched for gender sensitivity. And I will leave it at that as I thank my panelists for coming to studio for this discussion. We'll be back with more news after this. Stay with us.